So there was a bit in the news the other day that caught my eye, and I've been thinking about it, and I want to talk about it. EA has officially announced their Iron Man game. This has been rumored and talked about for a while, but now officially from the horse's mouth, EA has confirmed an Iron Man game is coming, and it's going to be developed by their studio Motive. Now, of course, right off the bat, it is EA behind this, so of course, with that comes automatic skepticism. I want to get that out of the way first, acknowledge that. I think it's worth discussing because I like video games and comic books and stuff like that, so obviously, but also the fact that Motive is working on it is interesting. So I just wanted to talk about what this is, but also what I would want from an Iron Man game. So jumping into it, it is confirmed that it will be a single player, third-person action-adventure game with, and I quote, featuring an original narrative that taps into the rich history of Iron Man, channeling the complexity, charisma, and creative genius of Tony Stark, and enabling players to feel what it's like to truly play as Iron Man. With EA Motive, they started as kind of a smaller studio. It was actually a Canadian studio founded by Jade Raymond, but they seemingly were kind of built up to support and create the brief single-player campaign for Star Wars Battlefront 2, which had some production value. I thought it had some cool moments, but ultimately didn't go anywhere, and I found it kind of forgettable. But they also did Star Wars Squadrons, which I thought was pretty damn awesome. Yeah, in the storytelling department, there wasn't a lot to it, but from a gameplay front, I thought it was dope. I played a lot of it in VR, and yeah, I'm also a Star Wars person, so I'm just predisposed to liking a lot of stuff, but yeah. Still, Star Wars Squadrons even kind of felt like a side thing for EA. They've been playing with trying to make traditional games again, but I don't know. And this does lead to their biggest project now, the Dead Space remake, which is coming in the very beginning of 2023. EA's Motive Studios is doing that, so we're going to be able to at least see what they've been up to. But there is something I really want to point out. It's the executive producer behind this project. Now, I'm reading this from Twinfinite, but Oliver Prow is behind Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. Okay. Marvel's Avengers, which, to be fair, I did go on record saying I enjoyed some parts of the single-player campaign, like the story, at least. And most recently, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, if you guys have been watching me for a minute, you know I absolutely freaking loved that game. I expected that game to not be great at all, and I played it, and I loved it. I liked it enough that I actually bought the Star-Lord sneakers, like the Adidas Guardians of the Galaxy stock. Anyway, rare opportunity to talk about my love for sneakers, but yeah, don't do that. So with leadership at least being behind Guardians of the Galaxy, I think that's cool. Was that game lightning in a bottle? I don't know for sure, but seemingly Marvel has this guy's back somewhat, and I think what I really just want to dive into is I hope they don't mess this up, because Iron Man is a big deal, and I hope EA specifically, Marvel, sure, yeah, but on the EA side, I hope EA doesn't half-ass it, because they're still kind of a little bit scared of some single-player, big-budget stuff. Go all out, because Iron Man, I don't know if you guys know this, Iron Man's a big deal. Iron Man was always a thing in the comics. We were always aware of him, but with the whole Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man thing, it has become a cultural icon. It's just this it's in the stratosphere. I feel like you can go to a small, lesser developed part of the world and someone would still be like, Iron Man. The reach of Iron Man specifically, not even the MCU, but the reach of Iron Man specifically is so powerful that they can do so much. This game can just really be a big deal, and I hope they realize that. What I see here is opportunity. I really think we're on the cusp, hopefully getting somewhere of the world of better superhero games. For a long time, we had some good stuff, but we also had a lot of downers. So I'm really hoping this is kind of the resurgence. Spider-Man PS4 really felt like that, kind of kicking off a lot of that. So I'm really hoping we see more good superhero games. Specifically, I guess, DC's got it pretty much figured out somewhat. Marvel had been kicking it around for a minute, and I hope things kind of keep going this way. So I hope that this Iron Man game specifically also just gives us a new Tony Stark. I know that's a bold take to not make him exactly like Robert Downey Jr., but I would like to see a little bit of a different spin on things. As someone who I love comic books specifically because there's so much room for different and fun interpretations and what ifs of characters. There's a real good opportunity for that here, to create a different different type of charismatic and smart and fun Tony Stark. This might be like an unpopular take, but I'd actually be curious to see how it would do if they played him a little bit like more of the straight man and not like the wacky Tony Stark. But who knows? There's so much they can do just from like comic book arcs, right? Like the first thing that always comes to mind when I think of Tony Stark or Iron Man is Demon in a Bottle, and how that like a lot of Iron Man things were kind of cherry picked for the movies but never really touched upon. And Demon in a Bottle not only just tells a cool story involving alcoholism, which was crazy for a comic arc in like the late 70s, I think, but also there's just some cool action, Tony Stark intrigue, Iron Man crazy chaos shit there. So they could do a lot. They could also do something a little bit different with World's Most Wanted. If they were to kind of cherry pick from that, you get Tony Stark on the back foot a little bit on the run, kind of like a renegade Iron Man would be kind of interesting and maybe a good setup for a video game, or Crash and Burn. Crash and Burn, if they take from that, you can kind of get like, I feel like that's a good starting point to kind of do like a half Tony Stark, half Iron Man thing. Like, can the video game make the Tony Stark and like, you know, Stark Industries interesting? I don't know. Then there's the fun shit too, like Extremis. They can pull from that, and again, like a lot of the things I'm bringing up, like there are little elements of them in the Iron Man movies, but not really to the length that a lot of people would want to see. So there's stuff that they can do, man. Even War Machine. Think about War Machine. War Machine and like the whole like War Machine Tony Stark together thing was pretty brief on screen, at least. Like if we're talking just like traditional suits kicking ass together, we didn't get too much of that, and I would love to see that here. They could do some of like the birth of War Machine. There's a lot. I'm also predisposed to liking War Machine a lot because I loved when he would show up in the old animated cartoon. I just thought he looked really cool. His armor looked cooler than Iron Man's. Is that blasphemous? I don't know. But from a gameplay perspective, like, you know, everybody's buzzing like, what could this is going to be like an open world fly around Tony Stark type of thing? Like, is your home base going to be like your mansion or something like that? I don't know. There's so many different ways that this can go. I liked the Iron Man PSVR game. Like, it wasn't perfect, and it was kind of like, I don't want to say cheap. It wasn't cheap. That's not the right word, but it was simple. You know, it was a VR game. There's only so much you can do, but they did a really good job actually making it fun to play as him, to really feel the momentum of flying around using your thrusters. So if they could make it fun and satisfying to fly around as Iron Man with an interesting mechanic, not really where you're just steering him in the air and that's it. If they could really, really integrate some fun boosting and like momentum and directional based thruster stuff to make it a little bit more fun, and like you have to pay a little bit more attention when you're flying around, you know, similar to how Spider-Man would web swing. If they could come up with something clever to make flying more fun than just, you know, aiming where he goes, I think that could be great. But what I liked about Iron Man VR is that like they actually like using some of his abilities were a little involved. So I would like kind of cycling through and managing his abilities and like having to hold one button to open up something and then pressing another button to like activate it and then holding something else to shoot it. Like really feel like it's like things happening. Does that make sense? Basically give Iron Man the complexity he could have. Now that of course comes to like a philosophical like design standpoint of whatever this new Iron Man will be, right? Like Iron Man can be a lot of things. We can have light, loose, bendy Iron Man, cartoony Iron Man. We can have chunky Iron Man, which I actually really like. I think that helps Iron Man stand out. Think about like the earlier days of him in the movies, like the first Iron Man movie where it felt really like ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. Like he was wearing heavy metal. He was an actual thing. I like that. I like the man in a can, like the armored tank thing. It feels a little bit more tangible, real, believable. It does feel like Tony Stark actually made that thing. Does it sometimes contrast with what I love about the comics, you know, the larger than life science and technology? Sure, but visually and I think gameplay wise, it would be kind of fun. Now, in terms of like other combat stuff, the Marvel Avengers game, animations wise, did do a good job with how Iron Man would fight with punching and kicking while also using his repulsors and thrusters and stuff like that. So I wouldn't mind them really expanding upon that. The big thing, again, it just really comes down to is structure, right? What is this game going to be like? Is it going to be just like a single player linear thing? I don't know, but I do hope there is a sense, and this is asking a lot, but like I would like a sense of feeling like you're Tony Stark and iterating and creating and, you know, upgrading your suit. Yeah, skill tree, sure, like you click things, but like if they could give a better sense of that, of really kind of developing and prototyping things, that would be cool to see. It'd be interesting if it was almost kind of like a more hardcore racing sim game. Like think like this is gonna sound silly, but like think of like Gran Turismo or something like Assetto Corsa or something like that, with like slick, clean menus and interface in Tony's garage, and you're like fine tuning all these little options, and then you can take your Iron Man suit out for a test flight to see how it works for you, to see how it controls. Are you gonna manage your power towards shields? Are you gonna manage your power towards weapons? And like, is there gonna be build styles? I would like to see something like that. Again, I'm getting a little crazy, you know, but it's Iron Man, so I'm hoping that they can really throw the kitchen sink at this type of thing. Ultimately, again, like I keep saying, like I think the potential is there for something, whatever way they go with it. I'm saying some stuff I would like to see, but I always try and make a point in these videos to say, like, even if that stuff doesn't end up in the game, it doesn't mean I'm gonna hate the game by any means. I gotta try it, but there's also so much opportunity to introduce more, kind of work like the original Iron Man movie and really kick things off, or really be the connective tissue. You know, introduce Doctor Doom, introduce the Fantastic Four. There's a lot that they could do with an Iron Man game. And I wouldn't mind like seeing them really go in on it, you know? It's difficult though, especially with the lasting impact that Robert Downey Jr.'s performance has on Tony Stark in particular. Even me, someone who's been familiar with the character before the Iron Man movie, sort of, like, it's still jarring now when you see a representation of Iron Man, and it's like, it feels a little different. You're like, wait a minute, you know, it's just, he did that good of a job. Like, it's that much of an iconic thing. But if they find the right person, and if they direct it in the right way, Tony Stark could be compelling in a completely new way. I don't know, I feel like I'm talking in circles at this point. I just kind of get excited about the prospect of a potentially good new superhero game. It could not, it could totally flop, but hey, like I said, I think we're on the cusp of hopefully more quality, at least Marvel realm games. Now, I'm looking at the next Spider-Man game, I'm looking at the Wolverine game, and hoping that this Iron Man game is right up there with it. But who knows, dude, I'm just riffing. So I just wanted to talk about that today. If you're new here, I just talk about stuff I like. Yes, there's a bunch of other stuff in gaming going on right now that you probably want me to talk about. I'm going to try and get to that when I can, but if you want to know what's going on, just subscribe if you haven't, and hit the notification bell, because I don't put videos out all the time, so I'm not going to spam you. But thank you for being here. I'm Jake. Pizza's on me. Subscribe because video games. See you guys next time.